Hi, this is Dana here. If you're not familiar with me, I'm an advocate for something called Unschooling. This is my fourth YouTube broadcast. I just wanted to announce the opening of my new website, www.unschoolingamerica.com. Unschooling America. I was so psyched that name wasn't taken. Anyway, one thing I want to talk about today is I've had a lot of emails from teenagers actually really interested in my perspectives on school and my stance on how I feel about, mandatory schooling. Now, I know my view is definitely the minority in our culture, but I think a lot of people are coming around to it, that we're in a day and age where schools are really becoming kind of obsolete. Back when they started out, as I've talked about before, they were one of the few places where you could obtain information and further your education. But nowadays, gosh, they have to be one of the most boring places to even continue an education, just their way of teaching with books, for example. We live in such a book-worshipping culture, and there's so many better ways for a child to learn than from books. I'm not anti-book. I mean, gosh, we love reading, and it's part of our lives, but, I mean, with the internet and television and magazines and hands-on learning, books are just like one of many, many ways somebody can learn, and I think schools really just kind of have such an old way of teaching that's kind of boring for people when so many new wonderful ways have come into play. And I remember all my days in school kind of all blended together into one long day, just where everything was the same every day. Every hour, the bell rang at the same time, and you had to move along at the same time. English was at the same time, math was at the same time. It makes my whole childhood seem kind of a blur of one huge long day, rather than, the days that I remember were the cool things, like the field trips, the fun field days, things where we would do something out of the ordinary, or what stick in my mind is like real learning experiences. Now, I'm not telling people to quit school, but if you're having a really hard time there are alternatives. There's some great books out there. One of my favorites is called the Teenage Liberation Handbook. Just do a search for it. They have it on Amazon, and that will just really open your eyes to the fact that school is not the only way to learn. If you're wasting your time there, then there's other ways you can go about it. I mean, you can even take night classes somewhere in just the one thing you're interested in. Learning can only take place inside the person if they have their own internal motivation to learn it. I mean, if somebody's telling you to learn Spanish, for example, and you have no interest, you're not going to learn it. It's not going to stick with you at all. It's going to be just something that you kind of like memorize maybe temporarily to get that grade to pass, but it doesn't have any impact on your life. If it doesn't have any meaning, it's just a waste of your time. There's plenty of other cool things you could be learning about. A lot of people don't really value any kind of education that goes outside the norm, like if it's not math, English, science, it's not noteworthy to people. Well, there's a huge, huge, huge window of opportunity of so many other things out there. I mean, you could do apprenticeships with somebody. Just don't ever let anyone make you feel like that the only way to go is school, because it's just not true. I remember my last day of school, and I was a pretty good student all the way through, and in my senior year, right after my graduation, I remember picking up my report card and seeing it and just throwing it away. It was like all this big lie. Everybody told me, your permanent record's so important for the rest of your life, and all these things you're learning, and, attendance is so important. It was all this huge smoke and mirrors from the school, but you know what, in the real world, none of it was true. I mean, the whole social aspect is really torturous for me. I didn't like it was really unnatural to be in a group full of people all my same age. It's not like the real world at all. Anyone that's still in school watching this, you can know that the real world is not like anything like school. In fact, school is much more like prison than anything else. I mean, the way that everybody has to eat together, you have to be moved around by bells. You're not even allowed to get out of your seat unless you get permission. You can't even go to the bathroom. Just basic human functions you can't even have the right to do without getting somebody's permission. That's not the real world. Anyway, I just have so much to share about it. I don't mean to sound negative about it, but I just want to empower people to know that you have options now. If your parents are for you leaving school, then great. Maybe you can work together to chase your passions, to become who you're meant to be in life, because too many people spend their days doing things they don't like, and it's a really sad childhood. All these things from peer pressure to bullies to anything negative that you're dealing with doesn't even have to be. It's not like that in the real world. And I think people kind of take all those things that happen to people in school as necessary to prepare them for the real world, but it's not true. It's kind of an excuse, kind of to keep somebody there. In the real world, if somebody's bugging you, like a bully, for example, you just call the police, or you leave your job, or tell your boss. I mean, you never, ever have to be in a situation in the real world in life where somebody's tormenting you without like being able to stop it. School's the only place where people look the other way, and I think it's just so unfair to kids. It's like this false freedom. You don't have freedom behind those walls. It's not life that you should have. Anyway, well, that was it for today. Just a short little blip about school. I went off on a little rant, but thanks for listening. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how children learn in my next segment. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.